and they stood up in front of their throne. And the queen said, "We must go to visit sister."
We must go to visit sister.
But there is a problem.
But there's a problem.
We need a babysitter.
We need a babysitter.
Who could babysit? And the king thought about it. And then he told her who could babysit. And he said, "Merlin."
Merlin.
They said, "Great idea.
Great idea.
Let's call him."
Let's call him. Oh, Merlin. Yes.
"We need you to babysit the princesses."
We need you to babysit the princesses. No.
"You have to."
I have to.
No.
No.
They don't listen. And they fight.
They fight.
And they scream.
And they scream.
It's awful.
It's awful.
And they said, "We'll call Sir Nicholas to help."
We'll call Sir Nicholas to help.
Sir Nicholas.
Sir Nicholas.
And he said, "Yes, Your Majesty. You will help Merlin."
You help Lord.
And Merlin said, "Oh, brother." And they went and they sat back down. Then the queen and the king called the princesses.
Princesses.
And the princesses went. And they said, "Yes, mother." Silka. And they said, "Merlin's going to babysit you."
Merlin's going to babysit you.
And they said, "Yippee!
Yippee.
He's so fun."
He's so fun.
And they said, "Sit down, girls."
I'm so funny.
And then they said, "Merlin." And Merlin said, "Yes, Your Majesty."
Yes, Your Majesty.
They said, we are leaving.
We're leaving.
And they left. Dun, 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 dun. And they stopped because the queen said, "I forgot to get food."
I forgot to get food.
And the king said, "We'll get food from the peasants." And they said, "Oh, peasants!"
Peasants.
Really loudly.
Oh, peasants.
Allison, can you say it? Call the peasants.
Oh, peasants. We don't have any food. We don't have any food.
And they said, "Move away."
Move away.
And they said, "Bring us the food."
Bring us the food.
And the peasant princesses brought them the food. They were really sad. This was all the food that they had.
I have more food than I thought.
And so they took all their food and sadly, they walked back to the forest. And the king and the queen said goodbye.
Bye. Bye.
Well, just then the princesses stood up. And they called Merlin. They called Merlin's name.
Oh, Merlin.
And they asked Merlin if they could play with his crystal ball.
I think we have a crystal ball. No.
And he stood up and he said, "I don't think that's a good idea."
I don't think that's a good idea.
And they said, "Please."
Please.
And they stomped their feet. And they said, "We want it now."
We want it now.
He said, "Okay."
Okay.
And then he told them, he said, "Princesses, take it outside."
Get outside.
And then Merlin and the knight went and sat on the king and queen's throne. Merlin sat on the king's throne. And he called the knight, "Knight Nicholas."
Knight Nicholas.
Well, the princesses, at first, Princess Lily was playing with the crystal ball. And then Prince Zilka said, "I want to turn."
I want to turn.
And then hold it at the same time, and they fought over it. Oh no, and they dropped it. They couldn't believe it. They were so scared. They said, oh no. We're in trouble.
We're in trouble.
What are we going to do?
What are we going to do?
And they started to cry. Well, they cried so loud. The peasant princesses stood up.
What's that?
And they said, we have to help.
We have to help.
What's the matter?
What's the matter?
And they said, we lost Merlin's crystal
We
ball.
lost Merlin's crystal ball. He works for the king. And the queen.
Oh no. And they said, we need to find it.
We need to find it. It's too dark. Follow me. Follow me.
And they said, all of a sudden, 2 Robin Hoods came into the forest. And they said, good evening, peasants.
Good evening, peasants.
Could we have some food?
We have some food. We don't have any. The king and queen took it all. The king and the queen took it all.
They said, that's our mother and father.
That's our mother and father.
That's not right.
That's not right.
And the Robin Hood said, we'll help you.
We'll help you.
And so they started out in the forest. But when they went into the forest, they found a crystal ball, and they held it up high. And they said, this is Merlin's crystal ball. And they said, I know what to do. And they went to the forest. Well, just then, on the king and queen's throne, Merlin said, I need to go look and check on the princesses.
I need to look and check on the princesses.
So he called them first.
Oh, princesses. Oh, princesses. Oh, princesses.
And then he went in their room. And he turned around and he realized they were gone.
Sir Nicholas.
He said, the princesses are gone. Merlin said, the princesses are gone. And they were so scared. Merlin was very scared. They said, what are we going to do? Merlin said, Gary, Merlin
What are
said,
you going to do?
and so they went back and sat on the throne. Just then, dun, 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 Robin Hood ran into the castle, and Merlin stood up very quickly. Gary. And he said, what are you doing here, Robin Hood?
What are you doing, Robin Hood?
And he
You're
said,
not supposed to be here.
and he said, I know where the princesses are,
I know where the princesses are.
and I've got your crystal ball.
I got your crystal ball.
And he said, my crystal ball.
My crystal ball.
And they said that they needed food for the peasants.
We need food.
And they said, we'll give you your ball back.
We'll give you your ball back.
I'll do the voice. And the princesses.
And the princesses.
If you give the peasants food.
If you give the peasants food.
And Merlin turned around and he thought about it. And he said, okay,
Okay.
we'll wait here. Shake hands. And Merlin and Nicholas sat and waited. Well, Robin Hood came down to get the crystal ball. And then he went back up to the steps. And he looked at all the princesses. And he said, "Oh, princesses,
Oh, princesses.
I talked to Merlin.
I talked to Merlin.
Time to go home."
Time to go home.
And the princesses stood up. See them, Zilka? And Princess Zilka stood up and they said, "We want to take our friends."
We want to take our friends.
And Robin Hood said, "Let's go."
Let's go.
And Zilka said, "Follow me." And they went in. And they went into the castle. Well, when they got there, Hawk looked at Merlin. And Merlin stood up. And he said, You found the princesses."
You found the princesses.
And the princesses stood up. Princesses stood up. Lily and Zilka stood up. And they said, "Robin Hood saved us." And Merlin said, "Where's my crystal ball, Merlin? Where's my crystal ball, Robin Hood?" And he took him the crystal ball and he said, "Thank you." And then Robin Hood said, "Merlin."
Merlin.
Hawk, give the young Merlin. "Merlin,
Merlin.
where's the food for the peasants?"
Where's the food for the peasants?
And Merlin said,
They're here. They're going to have it.
"That's right, they can already eat here, they're here." Well, just then, the king and the queen came back from their trip. Dun, 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 da, 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 da. And everybody said, "Oh no, it's the king and the queen." Da, 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 da. And everybody said, "Your Majesty."
Your Majesty.
And they said, "What is going on here?"
What is going on?
And Robin Hood stood up. And the princesses that Merlin said, "I don't know. But the princesses are here." Really loud, Garrett.
But the princesses are here.
"Princesses, explain. Robin Hood saved our lives.
Robin Hood saved our lives.
And the peasant girls helped
And
us.
the peasant girls helped us.
They're our friends now.
We're friends now.
Can they stay?" And the mom and dad, king and queen, thought about it. And they said, "Okay, they can stay." And from then on, they all lived happily ever after. The end. All right, everybody sit down on the